the equivalent of 350 cars could be taken off the road for each train that operates. It is not just about the railway. In order to fix a known transport problem, the railway is the only solution in the sense of the catalyst. It's the starting point.
My name is Rachel Elnaugh-Love, and I'm standing as an independent candidate in the general election for the Derbyshire Dales constituency. And I am here at the old Bakewell railway station, standing where the rail tracks used to be. And I'm here with Martin Diver, who is the operations director of the Peaks and Dales line. And Martin is one of a team who is masterminding the possibility of the restoration of the railways to the Peak District to relieve the huge amounts of traffic which we are having to endure, clogging all of the roads in and out of places like Bakewell by tourists every single weekend. So, Martin.
Hello.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed.
My pleasure.
So give us a little bit of a potted history background of the railways and why this amazing railway is now disused and why they took the railways out in the first place.
Yeah, it was here for over 100 years and actually is credited for the creation of the park, albeit that the opinion at that time was divided in terms of whether it should be around or not. It operated successfully for over 100 years. And like many of the railways, the introduction of the motor vehicle, the independence that brought to reduction in traffic, changes in freight use, etc., caused its decline. And actually, one misconception is that it was a beach enclosure, but it wasn't actually. It was a year after Barbara Castle from as Transport Minister at the time closed it in 1968.
Okay.
It stayed fairly idle until around the early 1980s. I think it was 81 when the Peak Park Planning Board, as it was then, purchased a section of it, part of which we stood on, around 8.5 miles, and created it as a trail.
This is the Monsell Trail.
Yeah, the Monsell Trail, but it wasn't really complete until the Department for Transport funding enabled the tunnels to be reopened, 4 tunnels to be reopened.
Yes.
With the lighting and all the facilities and the improvements to the floor surface, which then created the full trail as we know it now. That trail actually was created in part to preserve the route for the future return of rail, and it still sits within the Peak Parks National Parks planning policies that it's safeguarded for the return of rail.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because back in I read some of the history and people like John Betjeman at the time were absolutely outraged because the Victorians blasted their way, dynamited through the peaks to build the tunnels. Absolutely. There's the huge viaduct which is out at Monsell Head, which is actually a stunning architectural masterpiece. I'm sure that's a listed monument there. So there was actually a lot of resistance at the time, but now that has been done, the tunnels are all in existence, all of those viaducts are still in place. It does seem such a shame that this remains disused, but I know, and let's cover this off very early on, I know that there is a lot of resistance to the reintroduction of the railways because of the walkers that use the Monsell Trail. So just let's cover that off. What is your plan to ensure that walkers, cyclists, tourists are not disadvantaged by the return of the railway?
Yeah, so our proposals obviously need to go in line with the current planning policies. There are various planning policies across the length of the route. So we're looking at the route, obviously between Manchester and Derby, because of the connectivity that's given to the Peak District from those areas and to those areas.
Okay. So you're talking Manchester, Buxton, Matlock, Derby? Yes,
and then also you bring in Chinley as well, because that's just the way the existing routes are. So you've almost got a missing section of track in the middle, which is the Monsell Trail, and slightly to each end. I think the thing that's really key is it is first and foremost preserved, safeguarded, for the return of the railway. I think that's the fundamental basis, and it sits within planning policy and has been there for a long time. However, that doesn't mean we just, dare I say, railroad, it's the wrong term, but come in and just go, which is what we're going to do. You know, our proposals see this reinstatement as a catalyst to integrated transport. We know the problems on the road. Plenty of footage from Easter just gone of absolute gridlock of people coming by cars. So what is it you actually want to create? And the problem is it often becomes talked about as just the railway. And actually, the railway is a component of it, but so is the integration with local buses, with cars, with EV charging at stations, if that's the solution, with cyclists, with walkers,
parking as well.
Parking, all those kind of things come together. Because with our proposals, and they're not particularly huge trains in the length, I mean, obviously things like that are still very early days, but we're looking at something that's got around about the equivalent of 350 cars could be taken off the road for each train that operates. Now, that's based upon
every day, every week, every month.
It's based upon the fact that the data from Derbyshire County Council around vehicle use is occupancy. The average occupancy across this area is 1.5 persons.
Okay.
Put that onto a 550 seat train in effect, and you've got about 350 cars per train. Now, that's an assumption that it's full, of course, but what it's about is the potential and what opportunity does that give. You know, surveys done by Peak District National Park have indicated quite clearly that there's high car ownership, high car usage. Locals are trapped because at certain times of the year they just don't go out. And actually what this is saying is it is not just about the railway. In order to fix a known transport problem, the railway is the only solution in the sense of the catalyst. It's the starting point. Because what you can do then is take the massive investment in buses that is already in place, look how you integrate that with the train, deliver a better service locally, you know, so this is all about the sort of the train arrives and the bus is waiting kind of scenario. You know, in somewhere like Bakewell, you'd have maybe an electric shuttle bus down into the town, you know, that sort of thing. You know, all of these are proposals. Obviously, we're still very early in the whole process in terms of permissions type. But it's often just seen as a railway, probably like the historical view of the railway blasting through and causing an issue. And then we often see reference to, this is just another high speed 2, this is just another thing. The reality of it is, if you park just for a second the condition of the assets, i.e. how good they are and capable for running over, the first thing is we're missing 3 bridges. That's it. With 3 bridges replaced, we effectively have the entire route with all the infrastructure. The second bit is looking at the condition of the infrastructure. It was a relatively slow route, 60 mile an hour, some bits slightly higher. So this is not trying to create anything fast. This is all about connectivity. And I mean, in terms of high speed 2 being cancelled, the northern leg, it does actually provide some capacity via a different route, because effectively from St Pancras you could come up to Derby and then up here and then into Manchester. However, that's not what it's principally about. It's about fixing this known problem. 90% of visitors to the park come by car. That's a national park figure, not ours. They're also quoting annual visitors are between 13 and 23 million per year. Now, we've only taken the 13 million. That's the one that tends to be, it's about 13.25, used more often. But in their own documents, we've got reference to this 13 to 25 million. That's an enormous amount of people coming by car.
Absolutely.
And so what this is about is facilitating that. And sorry, just to go back to what you actually asked is, what are we looking at here is a trail that's in use by cyclists, a trail that's in use by walkers. We do see the occasional horse, but not that many. What do we do with that? And because Monsell Trail's seen as a well-established, been there for decades. Actually, it's only been here in its current format since 2011, and that was Department for Transport money, so it's not like it's wasted money because it's all part of this safeguarding piece. And our ambition is to go beyond the planning requirements. So the planning requirements is seeking a suitable alternative.
Yes.
It's very open. We've had discussion with the park previously, which didn't yield any form of specification, but we've developed one because we're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And actually going beyond that is it's more than just a Monsell Trail, because there's a number of footpaths that cross the line or cross the former line,
Yes.
and they all need to be dealt with. Level crossings are a big issue for railways, so what do we do with those footpaths,
Okay.
which are right away? What can we do to improve the whole network of paths and
Yes.
trails
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
area? Because while we're building the railway, we've got all the equipment here.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Let me just I'll go to another few issues which I've heard voiced, because very much from my point of view, my approach is that we need to listen to all of the voices of the people. I'm sure that's your approach too, and find a solution where everyone is happy, if that is possible. Now, there has been a concern voiced about the possibility that if the railways are reintroduced, that there will be like quarry trains, haulage type, noisy trains disturbing the peace of the Peak District. So can you cover that one off? Are you seeing this as more like a tourist line, like almost like a narrow gauge tourist line?
No.
You're seeing a fully blown
This is a full
haulage?
Yeah, it's a full rail reinstatement. So it's mainline standard
Okay.
rail reinstatement.
Is that going to be a problem then, having rumbling lorry, wagons full of limestone rocks?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of issues at play, really. So with the infrastructure designed and in place, you have the ability to run X number of trains per hour.
Yes.
If those X number of trains per hour were looking like, as we progress through the permission stage and the interest grows and all the rest of it, that we won't have enough running, say, 2 passenger trains an hour, then we'd want to prioritise the passenger trains over the freight.
Yes.
That's not to say we won't run freight, because actually quarry output's set to increase yet again.
Yes.
A lot of that is on the roads already.
Yeah,
Derbyshire.
rumbling along the A6,
There
for
is
sure.
there is always that unfortunate balance that somebody in location A may say, well, I don't see many of those lorries, and the benefit might cut across somewhere else.
Yes.
Part of the issue with a nationally strategic scheme is that the benefits are varied. So, for example, a lot of the road traffic, for example, that we might take away could be from Buxton to Ashbourne Road rather than what you see in
Yes.
Bakewell. So there's always that unfortunate imbalance if you look at it as a single community.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is not a proposal to fill it with freight and squeeze a passenger train in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
This is a proposal that says, what can we sort of basically operate? What's the interest? And if you throw in the mix, for example, Peak Rail and their services, heritage tourist trains that currently go into Buxton, for example, maybe once or twice a year,
Yeah.
opens up a whole opportunity for using the route to, say, Chatsworth or even Bakewell or
Yes.
anywhere like that. So none of it's set in stone, but it is predominantly looking at what we can operate successfully as a passenger service. But if there's additional capacity, obviously the investment required to reinstate it has to be paid back, and the investor's return is on trains per hour sort of thing.
Okay, yeah. That was going to be my next question. Do you see this as a publicly owned asset, or do you see it as a public-private partnership? Where's the money going to come from? How much is it going to cost? I mean, these are kind of gritty, granular questions.
I mean, there are two elements to cost. There's development cost and there's delivery cost. It's actually quite upside down in some ways that our delivery costs, so actually putting the tracks on the ground, doing all the infrastructure work, is probably further evolved with the private sector than our development costs, which is why we've got the organisation, we've got teams of volunteers, we've got railway contractors, environmental specialists, all giving their time for free, trying to evolve that and build the business case with the hope that the local authorities will ultimately we'll pitch in for the bits that you can't do. So we've got a lot of experience, a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge within the team, but there will be bits that we need to invest in or need to be invested in. That's around the development bit. When you get to the actual delivery, we met with the Department for Transport only a couple of weeks ago, and it's quite exciting stuff because this is groundbreaking, it's new. This could become a catalyst for how rail is delivered across the UK. And what I mean by that is the Office of Rail and Road are the regulator for the industry. They set the standards that you need to meet for safety.
Yes.
They set the standards for the design of the railway. Currently, when you think railway, you think Network Rail. And
Yeah.
the way that Network Rail operates, unfortunately, and it's part, the whole structure, it's just how they are. I'm not going to pull that to pieces here.
Yes.
But their tiers of layers of contractors, subcontractors, all the rest of it means that we believe that we can save probably in the region of about 40% cost by delivering the scheme independently.
Yes.
It would become potentially the first privately funded, big mistake there, privately funded railway in the UK to new standards that meet the Office of Rail and Road requirements, but are not Network Rail standards.
Yeah.
And so what that could mean is that we are able to demonstrate through the reinstatement of this line how actually rail can be a cost-effective solution, because it's quite alarming sometimes when you look at the numbers in terms of reinstatement. So at 40% less than the current method used within Network Rail for procurement is how we see it happening, which in itself then brings it into reach of a more positive business case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It's balancing business and money with the people's rights, as well as the environmental concerns. And to me, that's always the balance that we're looking for. That I know a lot of people are all for the environment, but are neglecting the gritty issues of the people's rights. Not just the people's rights to walk this route, but also the people's rights to travel by public transport, which has to be a big thing.
I mean,
this is the thing I just wanted to touch on, Martin. Sorry to interrupt, but my background is business, so I have that kind of accountancy mind, which kind of tots things up. That this could actually be incredibly lucrative, because if it is true that there are 20 million tourists or so coming into the Peak District every year, even if only half of them use the railway, so that's 10 million, and there's a fairly reasonable fare to come in and out. Maybe it's, I don't know, £20 return, which is cheap as chips in terms of rail travel. I mean, you're talking, £200 million straight off the bat annually as a revenue stream, which tourists would be happy to pay to come in. And also, I have in my sort of little visionary mind the possibility, having been like trekking and touring across the world, there's some amazing kind of glass roof tourist trains like in Machu Picchu, where you can, and a lot of classic steam rail, like classic trains like out at Matlock, where you could have picturesque tourist type routes where people can really enjoy the scenery, and it doesn't just become a functional route, that people are actually coming in and seeing the best of the beauty of the Peak District.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot in that. So obviously from the standards that apply and us having to meet those. So our challenge is discussing with the regulator what we can do differently to Network Rail. So we're not talking about importing risk, but we're talking about having a sensible control measure that works for them, meets their standard, which in itself will bring down the cost, because Network Rail's probably gone a little bit the other way, understandably, because of some of the issues they've faced. So taking the best of what Network Rail's done, looking at what can be tweaked. I think then you're talking about how the railway's operated. Is it a private operator? Is it a franchise? Well, obviously franchise is moving on, but whatever that looks like, all quite new. So a lot of this is being tested as we go. Rolling stock are all subject to UK standards, so whether we can get the glass roof, but there are certain designs of rolling stock that have bigger windows that are sort of used in Scotland and that sort of thing. And then obviously within the context of that, taking a location like this with an empty station building and a crumbling infrastructure that's listed.
Oh well, you were telling me that this is a listed wall.
This is a listed wall,
or
part of the original canopy.
Very badly cracked and subsiding by the look of it, that has been unloved and unappreciated for
and this is what we
years.
talk about national decline in the sort of remaining infrastructure. That if this was operational, that'd be looked after. It's
Yeah.
also a direct cost to the national park.
Yeah.
So somebody's paying for it that's not necessarily getting a return of it. There's no cost to come on here. In terms of, you talked about the business case and the funding, the proposal is that this is about a piece of infrastructure that has third-party private investment,
Yeah.
that has a return on that investment, that when that investment is returned, it becomes part of national infrastructure
Yes.
in the sense of publicly owned. So this isn't
Owned
about...
by the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
let's make
about
that clear.
it's about a means to getting it built
Yeah.
in order to then be able to pay back the investor to then hand it back over. So actually, it's very unique. It's never been done.
Yes.
It's been tried to be done, but it's never been done. And we think because of the team that we built up, and I'm not just talking myself and the volunteers here, we've got some serious industry players involved in terms of contacts and people that are supporting us. The Department of Transport quite excited about that concept, because the reality of it is national infrastructure is the lifeblood of this country. Without it, we're stuck. And
Yes.
what the current High Speed 2 programme has shown, whether you're for it or against it, is how those costs can spiral, but how they were high in the first place. If we can take 40% out of cost,
Yeah.
and that's our estimate. Obviously, as we go further down the planning route, we'll have more understanding of that. Then what you create is a model for UK rail and getting people moving. So some of the lines as well that you perhaps wouldn't necessarily think could ever be reinstated could potentially take that model
Yeah.
and be used
Yeah.
beyond here.
Yeah.
So it's and in itself, my view is that if you build such a railway that's right for the communities, right for the travelling public, that's dealt with what we need to do with those that want to walk and those that want to ride bikes and all the rest of it, you ultimately create interest in the area just by the very fact that the railway's here.
Yeah. So in truth, what's really needed is visionary leadership, which is looking into decades in advance of really biting the bullet and investing and reinstating so that generations to come can enjoy and take advantage of this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So obviously I'm standing as an independent candidate for Derbyshire Dales in the general election on the 4th of July. And I won't say if, I'll say when I am elected. I will be 100% behind you. And the reason why I feel so strongly is because I did attend a public meeting at Bakewell Town Hall, I think it was last year, incredibly well attended. And there was very strong debate, and it was a very interesting evening, but there was a show of hands, and the majority of people at that meeting said that they were behind it, and we listened very intently to the objections. So I would be very much behind the reintroduction of the railways and supporting you and bringing together all of the authorities and whatever is necessary to make it happen. So assuming that that is the case, how quickly do you think it could be done from 5th of July, new moon day, new opportunity, a new wave of energy coming in? Because I can't see that the Conservative Party are going to be re-elected. So I do think everything is up for grabs. So what would be the next steps, assuming you had that green light to get going?
I mean, one of the things that the Department for Transport is keen on is that we can bring local authority partners on the journey with us. We're starting to see a shift in some areas, which is really positive. There is a nervousness, understandable. When you're, I mean, I think, we appreciate your support, and we would love to see that across all parties, because it's national infrastructure, it's not political. It's about the country and the productivity within the country, connectivity.
Well, we need to move away from party politics into supporting the people, and that's why I'm standing to be a representative of the people for the interests of the people before everything else.
And I think, the railway knows no boundaries. You can get a freight train from here to China, for example. Well, not you wouldn't catch it, but so stuff comes by rail from China now. And all those kind of things. It knows no boundaries, so you can't I can understand the concerns and people look at it sort of very insular. You have to look at the whole thing and what it does for that connectivity. Social exclusion is massive.
Yes.
And as we know in the area, people move out because there isn't the connectivity. And then they come back later in life. Well documented. But to go back to your question, which was how long? I mean, our current timescales as an unfunded campaign are obviously slower. If we had funding of some form, and that could be spread across a range of local authorities,
Yes.
all the way from Manchester to Derby, because there are benefits for them all. You know, even going off area here, Hazel Grove has one of the highest road vehicle pollution outputs, you know, what the scale is. Yet this route comes through Hazel Grove, so has the capability of reducing traffic on the A6.
Yes.
So there are benefits which we're just setting out in more detail at the moment. Our current proposals are that the first case, the first business case in terms of the documented business cases that are in existence, Better Value Rail, will be submitted hopefully around September. Now, it's important to remember that the Restoring Your Railway scheme, which although we weren't successful in getting the money, which in essence was because we were too complicated, I think, the route was assessed, or our submission was assessed as positive in terms of the economic benefits and the environmental benefits in terms of the known traffic problems and connectivity. So we know there's already a positive assessment within the Department for Transport. We're now on to the first step of the formal process, Better Value Rail. That is actually the sort of 80% of the strategic outline business case, which is the next piece. Once we get to that, which probably unfunded would be into next year, is where we probably want to tap into more development funding if we can.
Okay.
So that we can accelerate it and also bring in the skills that we perhaps don't have within the team. How long's a piece of string? How long does it take? We've got a whole plethora of permissions process to go through.
Right.
I'd like to see a train running within 5 years.
Yeah.
I think we could possibly do it quicker if we can utilise the excitement within the Department for Transport about the new concept.
Which is no longer, by the way. I mean, this is the point, isn't it? Parliament has been dissolved. Yes. The Department of Transport is kind of no more.
Yeah.
And who knows what departments will be created by the new government.
Yeah. But obviously, you know, business has to continue, and once the election's out of the way, things are going to be in place even if they change. It doesn't stop us. We can't stand still. You know, we've got the team working for 5 years.
But there is an opportunity for a radical transformation in the way that British society is run at this election. And I know that there are many people like me who are so fed up with party politics that we are standing as independents to be an alternative choice that is outside of party politics and big corporate agendas, and can truly be a voice for the people and what is in the best interest of the people.
And that's really important. I mean, it's one thing that's really important to say is everybody that's working on the team with us has some connection to this line.
Yes.
Has some reason for it being there, whether they live actually directly on it or indirectly, or they've experienced the difficulties of getting to where they need to get to. Everybody has their own backstory.
Yes.
And this is not about doing something to the communities. And of course, you've got to do your best to take on board everybody's concerns.
Yeah.
What we found is most of the concerns come from a lack of information. So we're about to launch our trial of a community engagement team. Of all places, we probably didn't expect it to be Darley-Dale.
Right.
And Darley-Dale, actually, the public meeting in Darley-Dale was received extremely favourably, like Bakewell.
Yes.
Massive support, probably 90-odd%.
There is a train running through Darley-Dale, isn't there?
That's the private heritage
the tourist train, yeah.
We thought that might be a challenge because it's in their back garden.
Yeah.
The majority were for it, and our membership increased by 30% off the back of that meeting.
Yeah, brilliant.
So we're looking at creating these community engagement groups where we can pass out messages, they can be eyes and ears, they can bring back concerns, so we can rapidly turn round that level of engagement, because we can't do it as a small team that we are.
Yeah.
You know, we're about 80 odd members now, and a core team probably of about 20, with a core team of probably only about 10. So, you know, it's a challenge, but it's the support, I would say, overall is growing. And I think where that comes from is there are assumptions made
Yes.
The number of times I read on Facebook, it will never happen, because it's somebody's throwaway statement, has no basis. In the same way as I've no basis for saying it will definitely happen. What we're saying is
everything is possible
absolutely.
if we have vision.
Absolutely, and that's
and
what
focus.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is about, here's an idea. We want to deliver it differently. We want to take account of as many issues as we possibly can.
Yes.
And what you end up with in the end of that is a mainline railway that's sustainable, environmentally friendly, that actually also has supported a whole trails network that interlinks, with a bus network that interlinks, with the ability to park if that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
That whole last mile connectivity, as we call it. So wherever you're going from here, when you get off the train, how do you get there, whether it's walking, cycle, whatever. All of those things factored in. So you create this seamless thing, because it's well documented that if you put people through too many changes of trains or too many changes of methods of travel, you start to go back to car.
Yeah.
If your train service frequency isn't high enough, so if you're only running 1 an hour, you're unlikely to shift people. But you start to come 2+ an hour, then you start to create a different environment where people go, oh, actually, missing a train and the next one's in 20 minutes is different to missing one and the next is in and out. Oh, I may as well drive. That kind of thing. So it's got to work.
Yes.
There's no point running empty trains.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's got to work, and we know that there's a problem. I mean, our work a couple of years ago looked at modal shift. We used we had the benefit of some university students working on a model for us.
Yeah.
And we looked at even just a 25% shift from car to train would be enough to make a difference. And obviously, as we know, because if you look at each of the lines that has opened, so Borders Rail in Scotland, for example, massive mistakes made because they only put a single line in with passing places, so where it goes to 2 tracks from one, so a train can pass. They're now having to upgrade the whole line to double track.
Okay.
Our proposals at this time are a full reinstated railway that can have the capacity that's needed from day one.
Okay.
Now, obviously, things can change through the development and all the rest of it, but that is the proposal. Because
it would have been double track originally.
Oh yeah, and more in some places. Yeah, I mean, every station. All of these units here at Bakewell are on what was a goods yard.
Yes.
And that is the other thing with a slight exception around what potentially we need to do with supporting peak rail and keeping them operational. We're only looking at using former railway land.
Right.
We're looking, therefore, land that's been safeguarded for decades and is documented as being safeguarded.
Yeah. And
we probably only need about 85% of that land.
Yes.
And so this is not about carving up landscape. This is existing.
It's a restoration, isn't
absolutely.
It? Yeah. And my sense when I was at the public meeting, and also from speaking to you and hearing from others within your association, that there's a real sort of love of railways. There's a real heart and soul. This isn't like a sort of hard-nosed business idea to make money. There's a sense of wanting to, as I said, restore something for the benefit of all that is beautiful and will be actually really enhancing the area as opposed to acting to its detriment.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, earlier, this is, every one of us has a story. There's a backstory.
Yeah.
Yes, there is, of course, a third party involved because we haven't got the money that it needs to reinstate, and it's not cheap. However you look at it, reinstating.
But money is available for. Money can be found.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at COVID. So, 400 billion found overnight, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
And for wars, why can't we focus that money, that kind of money?
And the key here is for us is holding on to the proposals which are doing it differently.
Yeah.
Because if it suddenly snaps up and goes into a Network Rail process, it's going to cost a lot more.
Yeah.
We'd like to keep the position we've got if we can. This is not about us necessarily controlling it as individuals, but having this put through as here's a wonderful opportunity that could become, a blueprint for this country and beyond. We used to, when we talk about trains, they kind of bring out all kinds of nostalgia and stories. But the UK was the leader in the rail industry, as the birth of the railways, and yet you look elsewhere and how much we're being left behind now. Okay, it's an easy statement to make when you've got enough land that it doesn't cause issues. We've got the complexities of the country being sort of densely populated and the topography, for example. But here is a railway line. It is here.
Yeah.
It's already here.
And wouldn't this be so glorious to be restored and to come back to its full potential and to be loved and looked after again?
You know, and again, I mean, the last time we looked, the national park had a figure of £250,000 for the upkeep of this route. That's £250,000 they can do something else in the park with.
Yes.
You know, so it's got so many knock-on effects.
Yeah.
If you were to turn this station building into some community hub of some sort, you know what I mean?
Definitely, just the opportunities for cafes and bike hire, like down at Hassett.
And actually, what you do then is you grow tourism sustainably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're not any promotion of the park really is promotion of vehicle use at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, so every time you say come and visit us, well, actually you're putting most people, you know, into a car to do that.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, I have to say about tourism, I feel very strongly about that here in the Peak District, we should be positively embracing tourists.
Yes.
We should be welcoming people coming out of the cities to reconnect to nature.
Yeah.
Because it's so good for health, for the nervous system, for families to come, to walk, to cycle, to be here. But sitting in a traffic jam on the A6, I mean, I live in Bakewell and I know how do not leave Bakewell on a Saturday morning because you won't get back in. It will take you an hour to get back in. And it's sad to see these lines of traffic all the way back, often to Chatsworth and beyond. And all along, you know, along the A6 from Matlock Way. Wouldn't it be amazing to take a chunk of that traffic off the road?
And I think it's about, as I said earlier, it's about being a catalyst. It isn't the train fixes everything. What it does is it creates an environment that's not there at the moment.
Yeah.
So a whole wealth of people can come by train that can't come. And this is, you know, this is a big part of, we talk about access for all.
Yes.
Well, actually, if you haven't got a car, you're not coming here in reality, or you're going to be restricted.
Or the
buses.
Yeah,
but you see, again, you know, we look at Buxton as an example. For people in this area who perhaps want to go and see a show at the Opera House, not a chance unless you've got a car.
Yeah.
Because there's no bus after 6:15.
Yeah.
So what it creates is a huge sort of spine, shall we call it, of opportunity.
Yeah.
How do you then change the bus services to work with the new railway or the reinstated railway, because it's not new in that sense?
Yes.
To go, how can we make these communities more connected? How can how can this work? And then you can start to go into all the incentives over about not having a car and what you can do for residents and how you can make the railway work for them better and all those kind of things. It's endless.
Yeah.
It's absolutely endless.
Absolutely. So, Martin, thank you so much
for
coming out. You come all the way from Stockport to Bakewell.
I'd come by train if there was one.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been really fascinating to listen. And I really, really hope that we can find a way to restore the railways and to improve the Peak Park for all.
Thank you for your support. Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So if the railway was restored from Buxton to Bakewell, would you have come by railway today?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd love to see that happen. A link from Buxton to Derby via rail, I think it'd be great for the area, definitely. Yeah, I believe it is. It has been discussed. Whether or not it's happening, I don't know. But I think it goes back to the 60s when it was kind of taken down. But I'd love to see it back up, yeah.
If there was a railway restored to the Peak District area, would you have come by railway?
Probably not, no, because we'd have to travel to get to the railway station. So we'd have to use our car or go by public transport, which just makes everything a lot longer. We've got to have a decent public transport service. Then I would say, yes, we would. But unfortunately, it's not.
If the railways were restored to Bakewell, would you have considered coming in by railway?
Yes, I would. I do travel on the rail quite a lot, so I would.
And how did you arrive into Bakewell today?
Well, we're staying in Bakewell, but we came up by train from Sheffield and in by bus, so no car.
Brilliant. And if the railways were restored to the Bakewell area, would you have come in all the way by railway?
Oh, absolutely. We love trains. Yeah.
And if there was a railway restored to the Bakewell area that came in from Stockport, Manchester, would you have come in by rail?
Yeah, 100%. Whichever way is quicker, more efficient. I know we're trying to look at the global warming and stuff like that now as well. So, yeah, whichever way, definitely.